Sorry everyone, we have just some technical difficulty. Just a minute.
Hello, yes, I think I'm on mute now. Can anyone confirm if I'm audible? Sovi, can you confirm if I'm audible? Yes, thank you. So, welcome everyone. This is the first talk of WoC, and we are starting the first instance of WoC in Triple IT Kalyani. So, DSC welcomes you all. So, we start with Mr. Santosh Yadav. He'll be speaking on getting started with Angular. So, all of us have, in some instance in our journey here at Triple IT Kalyani, have worked on Angular, and today I think we'll have a really good introduction to this thing. And most of you who have applied in WOC have like suggested Angular as one of the things that you'd like to work on. So I guess this will be a really interesting thing to do. And so without further ado, we are already late, I guess, due to some technical difficulties. So without further ado, I'll invite Mr. Santosh to take over and present his talk. And I'll see you at the end of the talk.
Hey, hi.
Hello.
Hey, Nimesh, hi. Should I share my screen?
Yeah, you can start. We can hear you.
Okay. Are you able to see my screen as well? I mean, getting started with Angular. Can you confirm? Just a second. Okay. Hey everyone. First of all, thanks for joining us on Saturday morning. I'm sure everyone might be having their holiday or leaves, but and everyone is here to learn about Angular. So I'll introduce you briefly what Angular is, and it will be hands-on. So hope demo gods are with me, and demo goes absolutely fine. So it will be hands-on, and we'll learn about how to start with Angular application, how to add, let's say, APIs, how to connect your APIs, and how to create a component, and then if time permits, we'll also deploy it on Netlify. So let's go ahead and get started. So before I do that, let me just introduce myself. My name is Santosh Yadav, and I'm one of the GD for Angular as well as a GitHub Star. And I'm writer for indep.dev. So if you're not aware, indep.dev is one of the publications where you can find a lot of good contents, in-depth contents on front-end technologies, Angular, React, and even JavaScript. So if you are interested to learn deeply about any specific topic, I would say just go to indep.dev, and you will find a lot of things. You can also find me on Twitter, LinkedIn, and GitHub with a handle called Santosh Yadav Dev. And I also run a tech talk with Santosh on YouTube. So in case you're interested to join, I do live stream every Friday at 10 p.m. IST. Depends upon the availability of our guests, but most of the time it's 10 p.m. IST, where I interview people from different technologies. Yesterday actually, we had uh, director of DevRel from GitHub, Martin Woodward, and now we are going to have another stream next Friday, 10 p.m. IST. I've also started a Discord channel in case you are interested. So I'll share the link with the team so they can share it with you. So if you are interested in contributing to open source, come be part of the server, and we can do some extraordinary thing. So let's go ahead and get started. So why Angular, right? So whenever you have to pick up any technology or any framework or any library, the first thing which you think which you should think actually about is productivity. How my productivity is going to increase if I use this particular technology, particular framework, or particular language, right? So that's what we think. Of course, job is the first one, but of course, once you get the job, you have to think about what about productivity, right? How quickly I'll be able to create my application, how quickly I'll be able to publish new things, and how quickly I'll be able to scale my application. So Angular is actually built keeping productivity in mind. So we'll see that. We'll see how quickly we will be able to actually create application, and then we can just start coding. So prerequisite, most of you might have already this installed. So you may have Node.js already installed on your machine. VS Code or any editor of your choice. I'm going to use VS Code. You should have a little bit idea about TypeScript. If you don't, I think that's fine. I mean, you if you have a little bit idea about JavaScript, that's also suffice. So let's talk what Angular is, right? So whenever you talk about Angular, this is the logo which you see. But if I talk about Angular, Angular is not this. Angular is this. So you can see Angular comes with a lot of things included as part of your package. I mean, you don't have to go ahead and look for, let's say, how to work with forms in Angular. So Angular Forms is already a package which comes with Angular. How to make API calls. So you don't have to go ahead and use Axios or Fetch. You already have some APIs available which you can go ahead and use, or I can say some package which is already included, and you can use it. In case you want to do advanced stuff, so let's say you need access to the compiler, how you are going to do that, right? So in other technologies, the framework, they generally use Webpack or any other build tool behind the scenes, and that's what they do. But with Angular, they also expose the compiler APIs, which you can directly use, build some amazing stuff. Maybe you can build some dev tools for Angular. Maybe you can build your own CLI for Angular, or you can extend the CLI. So that's all is possible. But in case you need some tools for testing, yes, Angular comes with some default testing tools. We know them as Karma, and we also use another one for end-to-end test cases, which is Protector. Angular is actually looking forward to add few more tools, for example, Just and Cypress, but that's not confirmed yet. But Angular recently had a survey where they took the feedback from the community, what are the tools they want to see, and we may see those in future. Let's say I'll talk about templates, right? So in case you have worked on React, you may be aware of JSX syntax, right? So where you write your CSS and your template inside JS. Angular is pretty straightforward. They don't have JSX or something extra syntax. It's only HTML. So it's just HTML. You don't have to use anything else. So these are few, I would say, some packages which you should be aware of, small packages, besides compiler, of course, until unless you want to do some in-depth thing. I mean, you want to really build your CLI or extend your CLI. Otherwise, you don't have to, right? So let's go ahead and see what is included. So I already covered this. So as I said, there is a forms module, routing, which is really important, right? So whenever you create an application, you will have routing. React and Vue, they also have their own respective router modules. Angular also comes with a built-in routing module. And the good thing about routing in all the framework and libraries, the syntax is almost similar. So in case you have used React in past, you may find, or in case you have used Vue.js in past, you will find that, okay, the syntax is pretty similar. It's almost same. As I said, pre-configured E2E testing and unit testing, which is also already available. Ability to build tools, as I said, compiler APIs are available. You can extend CLI. Built-in support to create PWA. This is really interesting stuff. So nowadays, many people talk about PWA. So you can install your application. You can install it on mobile app. You may have seen a lot of websites using add to home screen, right? So you may have actually visited some website where once you visit it, you get add to home screen. How you can do that? Of course, Angular has a built-in support for PWAs. You can just do with a single command. And if time permits, I'm going to show you how you can do that. SSR and pre-rendering is something which is really important in terms of SEO, and lot of other framework and technologies do support it. Angular also does. So Angular also has support for server-side rendering in case you want to achieve it, as well as pre-rendering, localization and IATing. So I'm sure now in today's world, a language should not be a barrier for any platform or any product to sell themselves. So most of the platforms, they have multi-language support, and this is what Angular can do as well. So they also have built-in support for that. In case you want to build or use some extra UI components, of course Angular material is there. You can go ahead and use it, as well as there are many. I mean, we are probably going to see Bootstrap, how you can actually use Bootstrap inside Angular, and many more. So let's go ahead and get started. So what you need, so right now Node.js and VS Code and editor, and TypeScript, a little bit knowledge of it. So the first thing which we need to get started with Angular is Angular CLI. So you need to install it. So let me just go back to the code. I'll open the command prompt. So this is my folder where I actually keep all the code related to Angular. So I'm going to show you command first, which I will not run because I already have the Angular CLI installed. But in case you don't have, you can run this command at the rate Angular CLI -G. What this command will do is it will install the Angular CLI globally for you, so you can run Angular CLI related commands from anywhere. So once this is done, once you have CLI available, and you can verify it by using this command ng version. So it will give you which version of Angular CLI you have installed. So right now it should be for something 11.0.7. It is for me because I just updated it yesterday, and Node version is 12.19.0, which is okay because right now 14.0 is the latest one, but 12 also works fine. So, and I'm using, of course, Windows. So let's go ahead and get started and see how to create your first application. So Angular CLI allows you to create your application. So these are the things which we are going to see. So Angular CLI allows you to create a new app. So you can see a command called ng-new, and your app name, it creates a new app. So let's go ahead and see, run this command. So I'm going to say ng-new, and I'll call it as IIT Kalyani demo. And this code will be available on GitHub as well. I'll push it. And once you do this ng-new, whatever application you have, you will get some questions. So it will ask whether you want to share what, so do you want to enforce strict type checking? I would say no as of now, because uh, it I have to create a lot of interfaces. I'm sure we don't have that much time, but yes, so I'll say okay, I don't want to enforce strict type checking right now. And would you like to have Angular routing? I would say yes. And which type of styling you want to use? I'll choose SCSS, which is where you can actually use SAS syntax. And then once my application is created, how to start your application, right? So of course you need to do local development, and you need to see how your application looks like. And this is where you can just run next command called ng-serve, and it will start your application on by default port called 4200. So localhost 4200 is the where your application will run. And then you have, of course, once you create your application, you may have to create a lot of things, right? So if I talk about Angular, in Angular, what you do is I'm going to show you the angular.io website, just to give you an idea. In Angular, what we do is, or any front end technology or framework, what we do is we create views. We create small views. We generally call it them as components. So Angular allows you to, of course, create all those components, and it also allows you to create services and a lot of things. And what you mean by components? So if I have to talk about components on this page, all the reusable parts, right? So in case I have talked about this sidebar, this header, this footer, content section, even this boxes, right? So all these parts are actually nothing but components. So what you can do using Angular is you can create all these reusable components or reusable HTML tags, which if I have to simplify, so it's like a reusable HTML tag. In case you know about HTML, you may be aware of div. What you do using div? So it's like an HTML tag which you can use anywhere. Similarly, if you create a component inside Angular, you actually get an HTML tag, reusable HTML tag, which you can actually go ahead and use anywhere inside your application. And if you want to use it outside your application, you also have concept of libraries by using which you can actually expose them, and anyone can use your HTML tag whatever you have created. For example, the one which we mentioned, Angular material, right? So here also on resources page, you will find a lot of reusable tools which you have here. So let me just zoom in a little bit. I think, yep. So I'll just do, yeah. So here you have a lot of different data libraries and UI components. So this is the section where you can find different UI components for Angular, which is supported, and then you can choose whichever you want to. And probably we will use ng Bootstrap for our example. So we can just see how you can add Bootstrap to your application. So once this is done, let's see, this is also completed. So I'll just open this code inside VS Code. So, sorry, CD. And I'll do ng-serve. You can also pass a flag called -o, and it will ask you whether you want to share this data or whatever command you use with Google. I would say yes, because it's a demo project. So, and it will just compile your application. It will just compile your application, and it will give a URL localhost 4200. In case you pass -o flag, it will also run your, or it will also start your application in your default browser. So in case you have a default browser as Chrome, it will just go ahead and open your application inside Chrome. So, so let's go ahead and see what it does. And right now there should be a default page which actually gives you just some information about Angular CLI. So so it says compiled successfully, and let's go to localhost 4200 here. So this is the default page, like your getting started page in other applications, right, or in the technology. So you have some links to how to learn Angular CLI documentation, Angular blog, and there are a few commands as well. So in case you want to create a new component, in case you want to run and watch test, add PWA support, add some dependency. So everything is available here, and there are a few links to your let's say meetup, protector. This is Augury, and there are some tools, and so this different links which are available here. So we are going to change it. The first thing which we will do is let's add Bootstrap support for our application. So we don't we actually get a nice UI. So you can run you can actually integrate any UI toolkit by using this command ng-add and whatever the package name they offer. Most of the UI toolkit or most of the utilities which are available inside Angular, they support a command called ng-add. The advantage, let's see what the advantage you get, right, by using ng-add. So in case you use ng-add, you don't have to configure things manually. Let's say if I want to set up a Bootstrap, right, so it involves several steps. You have to download Bootstrap, you have to include Bootstrap CSS inside your index.html or some pages, right? In Angular, it's different. It actually includes inside angular.json. Those steps are automated. So all the steps got automated, and you can see it says updated package.json and updated app module, style.scss and polyfills. So this is what it did right now. And let's start our application again. I'll just do ng-serve now with -o flag. So it will start the application in default browser. So we don't have to go ahead and open browser and say localhost 4200. So use ng-add as much as possible. It automates everything, so you don't have to do manual installation. And now let's move to our next command. So once you do ng-serve, of course, you are able to start your application. After that, you may have to create components. Of course, as I said, in Angular, what you will be doing is you will be creating a lot of reusable components or usable HTML tags. And this is where you have something called ng command. G is short for generate. So you can say ng generate component, ng generate services. There are a lot of things, but how to keep track of it, right? I mean, how to be aware that, okay, these are the things which I can create. So the thing is, you don't have to, right? So that's the magic. So what we can do is, you can just go to any, let's say, let me go ahead and use another command prompt, and here I'll just go inside our folder, and you can just say ngg, and it will give you list of things which can be created using CLI. So you can see, okay, you can create something called app shell, application, class, component, directive, enum. There are a lot of things, right? Web worker, service, service. So these are the things which you can create using ngg command. And right now what we are going to do is, we are going to create a component. So let's see what we have. So here, let's open, okay, and let me just open the application inside VS Code. And let me just zoom in. Okay, so this is the application which got created using ngnew command, if you remember. So we did ngnew and everything is ready for us. And this is how Bootstrap is actually added to our application. So you can see imports something from Bootstrap SCSS / Bootstrap. So this is that, the adding of Bootstrap part to us, to our application. And then this is the default page we have. So app.component.html, it's like your index.html. So this is the first thing which will be rendered on your application. So I can just remove it. I can just say, okay, I don't need the default template, and I can save it. And let's see another thing. So as soon as you save something, and in case you have your server running, what I mean by that is, in case you have ngserve command running, it will automatically detect the changes which you made to your application. This is like to improve the productivity, right? So you don't have to actually go ahead and stop the server, make changes, and start it again. So it will auto detect all the changes. So it is like, it works in watch mode, in case you are aware of. So a lot of things, a lot of technologies, a lot of frameworks, libraries support this, including React and Vue, where they work in watch mode. So whenever you make some changes, save it, and it gets compiled, and you have the output. So right now it's blank page because we just deleted everything from HTML. And let's go ahead and add something. So I will not add something here because I want to show you how you can create a new component. So I'll go to this again command prompt, and let me see if I can zoom in here. So probably should be, yeah. Here I'll go ahead and create a new component by using nggenerate. So I'll say ngg, and I'll say this is employee component. So, so this is employee component. So where you may have some information about employee, some what is this? Ng generate. Oops. So ng generate, and then you have to say component, or you can also say C. So either use full form or use short. So generally I use C, which is short for employee. So these are the things. So I'm creating right now a component. So okay, so once you do this, once you create a new component, what you get is, you get few files created for you. And let me just introduce quickly to all these files. So there is an employee.ts file, which is a TypeScript file where you will be writing all your TS code. This is HTML where you will be writing your template. Remember, as I said, you don't have any special syntax here. It's all HTML. That's it. So you have to write your HTML syntax here. Some helper function which will be provided by Angular, which we will be using. Then this is for your styling, in case you want to provide any styling, and this is for your unit test case. Generally for demos, I don't use spec.ts, but as it is already created by default and I miss passing those flags, so it's absolutely fine. We don't have to care about it. But this is where you can write your test cases as well. And let's move, and here. So now as we have this particular employee component, let's see how to use it. So as I said, it creates a reusable HTML tag. And this is selector property actually defines what is the name of that HTML property or HTML tag. So app employee, if I want to use it, so I can just go to app component.html and use this as an HTML tag, app employee. And let's move to our application, which is already running in watch mode, and it can detect changes. And you can see it says employee works. From where we got employee works, it's inside the employee component.html. So employee works. So I can just remove it and I can say h1, and I can say this is employee details, right? Or just anything you want to. So now you can see you have employee details available here. So this is how you can just create your first component. And let's talk about next thing. So I'll just move to we will see build part later, because I probably will be deploying it on Netlify. And there is one more thing. I mean, Angular also allows you to deploy your application using an Angular CLI from your local machine. So there is a command called ng-deploy, which has integrations for multiple cloud providers. There is Azure, there is AWS. It also has for Netlify, GitHub Pages, and Firebase. And you can also extend it for any other cloud provider you know. So probably we'll be using GitHub to actually deploy your application. So let's move on to the template part. So we also already saw that it's an HTML. It's just HTML. Apart from that, you have some helper functions which is provided by Angular. So let's go ahead and see those. So here I'll go back to the component, and let's say if I have to bind some data, of course, why we create a front ends. So we can just display some data on your front end, right? So your users can see some data. It can be your dynamic data or static data, it doesn't matter, but it has to be rendered, right? And the other thing is we get paid for it. So we enjoy doing it, right? So we love creating front ends. So let's say if I have to bind something on my HTML, I have to show some data on my HTML. And here I'll say, okay, there is, let's say, a department property which we are defining inside my class. So I'll say, okay, this is department, and let's say I have some value. For example, this is IT, and I want to display this IT. So I'll say, okay, this is, you can just put double curly brackets, and you can use the variable name. So you will see here, I'll also get an intelligence as we type. So I can just say department. Where is that? In this strange. So generally, I should be getting some intelligence. I'm not sure why, because I'm doing live coding, so things don't go well every time, right? So I just did a department in curly brackets, and what it will do is, let's go ahead and see. And let's see our application. So here I'll just open, and you can see this is IT, which is available here. So what it is doing, right? So this syntax, this syntax is actually known as interpolation syntax. So whenever you have some property to display on your HTML, which is coming from your TS file, or let's say backend, right? So we are going to see an example as well where you will be integrating a API. So I have some dummy API. I'll be using JSON placeholder. I'm sure many of you are aware of it. In case not, don't worry about it. It's just a simple fake API which we'll be using. So I can just use whatever variable name I have. It works for all the primitive types. For example, I have an string, number, a date. So you can just do curly brackets and double curly brackets and display it. So this syntax is known as interpolation, and there is more. So what in case I don't want to use interpolation syntax, and what I need is, I need some HTML's property. Remember, so whenever you use plain JavaScript, right? So I shouldn't call it plain JavaScript because there is nothing called plain JavaScript. Let's say if I use JavaScript, right? And in case I want to access a div and bind something to div. So what we generally do is, of course, sorry. So what we generally do is you do document.get element by ID, get the ID of that particular div, and then you go ahead and use some properties of that particular div. For example, inner text, inner HTML, these are a few properties which are available. What in case you want to do that inside Angular, right? If you are using React, of course, you have access to everything. You can just say document.element, get element by ID, and you can write that code. What about in Angular, right? So This is where Angular shines. Let's see. So in case I want to bind something to div, and I want to bind it to the inner HTML or inner text property of div. Let's see how to do it. So I'll just create another property for it, and I'll say, okay, this is name of the, let's say, whatever employee we have, and let's say that employee is Amit. And here I can use syntax. Remember this box. So I can use this box, and then I can use any property of any valid HTML tag. Or let me just rephrase it, any valid property of any HTML tag to bind the data directly to this particular property. So if I have to talk about div, I have something called inner text because I'm aware of it. There is a valid property called inner text which exists, and then equals to, I can just use the property name or variable name which we have. And as soon as this is done, let's move back to our application. Sorry, let's move to the browser, and you can see the name is rendered here. I think this is really small, so let me just zoom in, and you should be able to see it right now. So you can see we just did binding, but we just bind it to the valid or just property of a div tag without writing document.getElement by id, then doing dot inner text or inner HTML. We just did it inside your template, all because of this box syntax. So this is known as actually something called property binding. So this is, I'll just keep I'll just write here. So this is interpolation, and this is your property binding. And the next thing, right? So once you know how to bind data, next thing is how to collect the user information. Now, to collect the user information, what you need events. For example, a button, and how to handle that button click. So generally in other programming languages or in JavaScript, you will say, okay, I have a button, then you will say, okay, on click of this button, call this particular function, something like this, right? So I will have a button, and then you will say, okay, sorry, on click equals to some function. So and then whatever you want to do, right? So this is how you generally do in JavaScript. In Angular, as we said, right? So you just write HTML. We don't actually write something else. But of course, Angular should understand what you're writing. So there is a small difference in the syntax. Generally, for, let's say, if I have to do something on click, I will say click, and then I will use I will use this syntax. We call it as banana syntax, and this is known as event binding. So we are actually binding an event by using this syntax. So remember, box syntax, property binding, banana syntax, event binding, and some function, right? So whatever function you want to write, I'll just write a function called hidden. So let's say on click of this button, we will hide some div on our application. So let's see. So here I'll just call this button as toggle button, and we will implement a toggle function here, and we need a variable to hold the value whether we want to show this particular div or hide this particular div. And I'll just create a button, a property called hidden, and I'll say, okay, by default it's false, so don't hide it. And here I can say this dot hidden is equals to not this dot hidden. So what I'm doing is, if in case the hidden property is true, make it false. If it is false, make it true. That's what we are doing. So we know how to bind it. We can just do curly brackets, and then we can verify the value of hidden here. So we can just put it inside a curly brackets and see. So let's click on toggle. So here hidden, I'll just change the function name. I kept it hidden. So I'll say toggle, and let's click on this, and you can see true and false value getting changed on click of toggle button. But I wanted to basically hide or show some div. So here there is a thing. We will be using some helper function from Angular. So here we can use some helper function. So let's see. First, let's try with some property of HTML tag. So there is a property called hidden. which exist on most of the HTML tags which we know or which are available. So I'll say, okay, this is hidden equals to hidden. So let's see what happens here. I'll just inspect the element, open the DevTools, and this div, right? So this is the div which we are going to hide. So click on toggle, and you can see you can actually show hide this particular div. So here, actually, what it is doing is it is just adding this hidden attribute based on a hidden property based on whether my property is true or false. That's it. But what in case I don't want to actually display this div until unless it is true? So I'll say ng if. I can use ng if is equals to your property. So this is something which is related to Angular. And once we do this, then now let's see. I'll go to the inspect element again, and let's talk about this particular div, right? So this is the div. If I click on toggle, you can see it actually removes the div from the DOM. So in case you in Angular you see something like this star and some directive, there's some helper function. So this is ng if is, let's say, kind of helper function, or we call it as directive. So these are known as structured directive. Why structured directive? Because in case they have a star, they are doing us one thing. They are actually capable of adding and removing DOM from your DOM element from your application. So if I see here, actually it actually adds the DOM element and then removes it in case I click again. So it actually modifies the behavior of your application, or it can actually change the behavior of your application. It can remove the element and then it can add it back. So that's why you will find a lot of some of the directives, built-in directives as well, with some whatever name it has. We saw ngif right now, and with star. So now let's move on to the next part. So I'm going to quickly show you how to integrate your APIs, right? So for that we have to learn about services. So I'll show you how you can create service first. So to create a service, what you can do is you can just go to the command prompt, of course, and here I can say I want to create this service inside employee because I'm going to make an API call and bind it inside my employee. So I can say employee slash employee because this employee is the folder where I want to create this, and then I'm going to create a service called employee service. Sorry, not NGGC, NGGS service. For service, it's S. So you can see, you can also create a service here. And once you have this service, what is the purpose of that particular service? Let's go ahead and see that. So services are for writing your reusable codes, or let's say in case you want to integrate or talk to APIs, don't do that inside your component. Do that inside services. Angular has this concept in React or any other programming language or any other framework. Not programming language, but any other framework, you will not find the concept of services. Angular has this something which is unique and which is really great because it lets you isolate your all the logic from your component, and you can just write your logic at another place. So here we have employee service, and let's see which API we are going to use. I'm sure everyone knows what API means, right? So I'm talking about RESTful APIs. You may have used some. So here we have REST JSON placeholder typecode.com, where you can get some reusable APIs, some dummy data which they give. Here you have some 100 200 records, and this is the endpoint. So this is from where I can get the data. So I'm going to integrate this particular API with my application right now to fetch this data and display it on the UI. So here we have this particular service, and the first thing which we will do is, of course, we are going to use some functionality provided by Angular to make HTTP call, or you can say API calls. So we need something from Angular. So the first thing which we need from Angular is, you can see this imports array. You have to use add something called HTTP. So here we will import first. So I'll say, okay, this is import from this. There is a API Angular /common/HTTP. So from here, we will get access to HTTP client module. So this will allow us to actually go ahead and use the functionality, or it will provide you some services internally, which you can go ahead and use to make the API calls. So first thing which we have to do is we have to go ahead and add this into imports array. Once we do that, we now have access to those APIs and then we can use it. Remember, any third party APIs, in case you are using any third party library or any third party packages, and in case they offer you some functionality, they expose it via a module. So what are modules? So generally you can identify that by them using they end with module, of course, and they also have something called @ng module. These are known as decorators, so I'll not talk about decorators. I'm just going to keep it simple or easy to get right now. So whatever starts ends with module, you are going to add inside the imports array, right? So now we added HTTP client module. Now we can go ahead and use something known as HTTP service. So I'll just go ahead and import, and from here I'll say, okay, this is Angular slash common slash HTTP, and what we need is we need HTTP client service. So I'll say HTTP client, and then to use this particular service, how we can use it. So Angular has some concept of dependency injection. So generally, whenever you have a class, what you do is you create a new instance of that particular class. I'm sure everyone knows about how to create a new instance of a class, because most of the technologies or most of the programming language follows the same pattern. So generally, this is how you do it. So you say uh, object. So let's say if I say HTTP is equals to a new and whatever class name you have. So this is how you create a new instance of a class. But Angular lets you use something known as dependency injection, which is a kind of design pattern, which is let me tell you, design this dependency injection design is widely used in Java and .NET. So Angular allows you to do that, and it is built in. You don't have to do anything extra, any extra configuration to achieve this. You can just go ahead and use this constructor, and you can say, okay, private HTTP and your class name. That's it. You just created a new instance. You didn't actually. Angular will create the instance and it will provide it to you. So after this, I'll just create a method. I'll say this is get to do's method, and here you can just say return this dot HTTP. In case you have worked with APIs, you know there are several verbs which are available: get, post, put, delete, patch, JSONP options. These are all the verbs which we have available when we work with APIs. This is get API, which we are going to call. So I'll be using get method. For get method, you have a single required parameter, which is the endpoint from where you want to fetch the data. So I'll say, okay, this is the date. This is the endpoint. I'll go ahead and mention this endpoint here. And once we have this, let's go ahead and use this inside our component. So I'll go to component, and here on ng on init, I am going to call that particular method to get the data and display it on the UI. So first thing, I need to inject the service which we just created. So I'll say, okay, this is private and employee service. I'll just say EMP service, and which is kind of type of employee service. And here I'll call the method. So this is this dot emp service dot get to do's, which is the method to get the data. But let's see one thing. In case you see the return type of your get to do's, it says it's an observable of object. Angular internally uses something known as RxJS, which is, I think, a little bit difficult to understand when you get started with Angular, because Angular uses a lot of things from RxJS. RxJS is a library, and it gives you the data in streams. So generally, when you use fetch, or you might have used Axios, what they return you is promises. So you can say dot then, and then you can just get the data. But RxJS follows different pattern. RxJS follows something known as publish and subscribe pattern, where you write a publisher. So this is a publisher, it will actually publish something to you. And then in case you want to receive some data from it, you have to subscribe. And what I mean by subscribe here is actually dot subscribe. So I'm saying call dot subscribe, and then whatever you want to call it as data response, and then we will just do res console. We'll just log the response. That's it. And then we'll see how to bind it, and then we will see PWA, and then we'll wrap it up. Uh, so here, let's go back to our application, and here it is, right? So let's go to console, and you will be able to see this 200 records available inside your console. So you got what you did just right now is you made an API call, you got all the data, and you are just displaying it in console. But that's not what we want to achieve. We want to render this data on the UI. So let's go ahead and do that part. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a property. I'll call it as to-dos, and I'll right now use type of any. As I said, I'm not going to create an interface right now. So I'll create a to-dos, and I'll say, okay, this dot to-dos is equals to response. So I'm saying whatever data we get from the API, just give this data back to this particular property to-dos. And then we can just use, we can just go to template, and here, let's try with your double curly bracket syntax and see what how our application looks like. So here you got something called object, not the actual data. So how to actually go ahead and render? So as I said, double curly brackets work really fine with primitive data types in case we have string numbers, but what in case we have arrays, right? So to work with arrays or to bind data to your arrays, you need some again help from the Angular helper functions. And this is where we are going to use some other helper function right now. But as we have array of records, right? So we will be using table to actually display these records. So let's go ahead and create a table. And I'll make this table responsive by using a class called table, which comes from Angular Bootstrap, or not Angular Bootstrap, but Bootstrap. So Bootstrap has this class called table. And then we have t-head, where we are going to show header section. And then we have a t-body, where we are going to display our body, which will be the number of records you have. And let's move on and bind the setter first. So I'll say, okay, tr, then you have th, and 4, right? So we have 4 properties. Let's verify from the API. I'm sure it is 4: ID, user ID, title, and completed. So I'll say this is ID. Then you have user ID and title, and then completed. Now let's bind the data. So to bind the data, we will of course place an tr, but we don't know how many records we have. I mean, it can be 100, 200, it can be 10, 20, or it may be thousands. So how to display those? So this is where Angular gives you a utility, or you can say helper function called ng-for. Remember this star. So actually it can render 100 records, 200 records. It will create those number of TRs for us. You don't have to do it manually. And then we can say let emp, or let's say we'll call it as to-do of to-dos, right? So this is to-dos is nothing but the variable which we have available. So what we are doing is we are running a for loop on the to-dos, and then we create TDs. And now I can just use double curly brackets to do dot property name. So let's go ahead and see what are the properties. So we have ID, and then we have user ID, then we have title, and then we have completed. So these are let me just do this. Completed, title, and I'll just remove all this empty. So what we did is we are saying run for loop for entire data whichever we have inside to-dos, and create multiple rows. So let's go ahead and see how it looks like on your application. So sorry, here it is. So you can see you just rendered the entire table or whatever array of records which you received from API on your front end. And this is what most of the time you will be doing, right? So you will get some data from your backend and you have to bind it on your UI. It can be user data. It can be, let's say, you have some hackathons, you want to show some results on your view. This is how you can do it. So you have entire data available. And as we used Bootstrap, this table is responsive as well, and you can just change the size, so you can see it auto adjust. So this is responsive table. And now what we are going to do next is, in case you have anyone has questions, please ask. Feel free to ask. I mean, I'll try to answer those as well. But next thing I'm going to show you a really cool thing, which is adding PWA support to your application. For that, I will just stop our this build server, and then you can just say ng add @angular. Let's go to the slides. So we just learned about the syntax, and then we learned about dependency injection. This is what dependency injection is. And then I was supposed to cover forms, but I think I won't be able to do it. But we just did let me just go back. Sorry. Yeah, we just did HTTP because this is what most of the time you will be doing. You will be making some HTTP as some API calls. So this is what we did, handling API calls. So in case you have some APIs to access, you can. This is how you can do it. And we will be doing PWA. So this is how you can create or convert your application to PWA. You can say ng add angular/PWA, and let's do that. And it will add all the functionality to your application. So you can go ahead and install this application. And let me just also tell you one thing. Meanwhile it is getting installed, there are prerequisites, some things which we have to follow while using PWA. PWAs cannot work on your local machine. It needs to run on production build. So you have to create a production build for this, and as well as it needs to run on HTTPS. So these are two things which we need to do. And what we will do is I will push this code on GitHub. So I'll just go to my GitHub repository, GitHub account, and I will create a new repository for us. So I'll just call it as IIT Kalyani demo. So here IIT and I will keep it public. I'll create the repository. And I'm going to push this code. Oops. I thought it was IIT Kalyani demo. Got it. So first thing, I already have this code available. So let's see if, yeah, so PWA support is added. Let me just build in and show you, and then we can wrap up the session. So I'll just add this git remote add, and then we have to do a commit. So let's go back and I'll change the branch. I'll change the branch to main. Stage. This is initial commit. And I'll just check in, and then I'll push. So I can just push it from here. Push. I can use push to, and yep. So I just pushed it on my GitHub account, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create and log in on Netlify. This is what I'm going to use to deploy it. So I can go to netlify.com. Let me just zoom in. Yep. And just let's log in. I hope I'm already logged in, because I don't remember my password. That's good. Okay. And now I can say a new site from Git, and I can choose GitHub. And you can search for your repository. So right now we created IIT Kalyani demo, so it should be available. Let's see. And let's see if the repository, yeah. So IT Kalyani demo, and I'm going to deploy main branch, and the command which we have to run is I'm going to run ng build hyphen prod. So remember the first slide which we discussed about Angular CLI, where we saw a command called ng build hyphen prod. So this is to create a production build, and it requires a published directory. So let me tell you how which directory gets created. Here in angular.json, you will find here output path. So for every project, you will find something called output path, and this is the path which you can use. So I'll say, okay, this will be dist/IT Kalyani demo. But before I trigger this build, I'll just verify if my code is actually pushed on GitHub or not. And let me, yeah. So just refresh this, and so we can see, okay, so the code is available here, and let's go ahead and trigger deploy site. And it will run you can see actually it is running your ng build command. It will just go ahead and install all the packages first, then it will go ahead and trigger the build, and then it will deploy it, and it will give you a URL. Everything for free. Of course, in case you have open source project, you can do it for free, and Netlify won't charge you anything. Most of my applications, most of my open source projects are on Netlify. I don't pay for it. So let's see. It will take few seconds. And let's see. So now it has started ng build hyphen prod. You can see this. And let me just have some coffee. So it is now generating the bundles. It is actually done compiling, and now it will create the bundles, all the JS files, minified JS files, which needs to be deployed. And once this is done, you will find a link. So it will give you a link which you can access. Okay, so done. So it says, okay, you have done with site is live, and now you can just click on preview. So let me just do, yeah. And where is PWA here? So let me just show you. Did you notice this plus? So you can just click on this plus, and then you can say install, and this is how it looks like on your desktop. So it feels like you have a desktop application. In case you just go ahead and access this URL, so if you go to this URL from your mobile, you will find, I'll just share this in comments. Sorry, I'll share it in private chat so it can be shared. It will be available, and once you do it on your mobile, you will find add to home screen. So we just did it without writing a single line of code for configuring your PWA. Angular offers you that by default, so you don't have to do anything. Sorry, I couldn't go through forms and routing. Maybe next time we can go ahead and do that, because I've already taken a lot of time of yours, and hope you learned something new today, and it is helpful for you. So let me, I think, thanks for sharing the GitHub repository already. That's already with you, and I'll share the slides. Just a second, and yep. So I can just share this as well. Share in case you are interested. You can also go through the slides for forms and other things. Yeah, and let me just share this Discord server which I have, and in case you are interested in doing some open source stuff for Angular, you can come join us, and we have a lot of things to do. In case you're interested, we can just do it together. So let's, and of course, in case someone has question, please do ask. I'm just looking for the link where I do have. I'm really bad. I'm sorry. I mean, I'm new to Discord, so Really sorry for that. Mm. So I got link, and I'll just share here. So it can be shared with everyone. Yep. And we also this is what I want to do this year. So I'm going to I've started this last year, so I'm going to mentor few people, and in case someone is interested in becoming Google developer expert, that's my target as well, to nominate few people to become Google developer experts or GitHub stars. So if you are if you wish to, I mean, you can join the server, and then we can work on it together. So yes, Nimish, over to you. I mean, I'm done.
Thank you so much. That was a really engaging talk. And we first thought like Angular was something that was quite difficult, but I guess your talk was really good follow along thing, and
Thank
that
you.
can be seen from the excitement in the comments as well. We first thought the StreamYard's integration with YouTube, we'll use that for the questions, but like it's
Uh-huh.
flooded with it's
Oh
flooded.
my God.
So yeah, there are a couple of questions from the
Uh-huh.
audience. First is like the way we see it, Angular is more of a front end framework. So like the person was wondering why is it so tightly coupled with backend? And by backend they meant things like routing modules and servers and things like this.
Okay. So when as so I'll just come back to this slide, right? I mean, so whenever we talk about Angular, right? So Angular is not just a single library. It's combination of everything. So this is one of the reason actually it is go to choice for all the enterprise applications, because it includes everything. So if I have to create an application, if I have to create let's say end-to-end application for my enterprise, I will not look for like different solution, right? So just go ahead and check which router is available, go ahead and check which API we should which API. So for example, should we use Axios or we should use Fetch? So Angular is opinionated, so it's everything available. In case you wish to, you can go ahead and choose something from outside, but as a part of the package, it offers you everything. So you don't have to go outside and check for it, which is what enterprises need. They want everything to be included. So for example, if I go to Java or .NET, they come with everything, right? So they are framework, and they include everything. They you know how to create or how to connect to your backend, how to let's say in case I have to use some other approaches to talk to my database, maybe it can be your entity framework, which is very popular in .NET Word. So they includes all the solution inside the framework itself, and Angular is what it it offers. So it has everything available. You can just go ahead and use them, and that's it. This is what enterprises need.
Right. Then there's a second question, that is why TypeScript? Like the moment we were introduced to TypeScript was when Slack, where we are actually based,
Mhm.
it shifted its desktop application from JavaScript to
Mhm.
TypeScript. So like why Angular also is based on TypeScript?
Okay, so to be frank, I mean, TypeScript is something which is growing really fast, and you might have seen last year, lot of even React developers started using TypeScript, and Vue.js, if you are aware, Vue 3 is actually rewritten in TypeScript. The advantage which I have seen of using TypeScript is, of course, it's easy. It's easy to understand. I mean, it is nothing, but it actually provides you type safety. So I have worked in JavaScript, and let me tell you, it is really pain to always work with undefined and null. So we used to get a lot of errors on production. So those errors are something which you cannot catch on your development machine. So when we used to move on production, we used to get a lot of errors. This is undefined. This is null. This is what that, and it was really pain. With TypeScript, it actually provides you type safety. So you, in case you get some error, you get your development machine, and you know that okay, this is going to break on your production, and by using this, actually you are reducing your errors. So there was a study from some of the institute which says in case you are using TypeScript, you are already avoiding 15% of the errors from your production application. So type safety is of course one of the feature which where I love TypeScript, and Angular was one of the first framework, I mean, to actually go ahead and choose TypeScript. So Angular, the tools which we have inside Angular, right, it was way ahead of its time. So in 2014, no one was aware of what RxJS is. No one was aware what TypeScript is. But Angular team said, okay, we will be using those tools and technologies, and of course, they have their fair amount of backlash from sorry, a fair amount of what you say. Uh, uh, Talk about bad things. Whenever you talk about bad things, they mention this, that okay, it was TypeScript, and then Angular JS to Angular migration, there was nothing, there was no way, no path. So a lot of people actually said, okay, Angular is bad, that. But nowadays you can see a recent Stack Overflow survey. Actually, a lot of you developers are using TypeScript, including React developers. So it was way ahead of time. So they knew that they can avoid a lot of errors by just using TypeScript, and that's what they did. So the advantage of using TypeScript is also, in case you are using Angular, if you make some mistake inside your template, inside your HTML, you get that error during your compile time. It's not like you go to browser and then you see, okay, there is an error. It's not, it's your inside your compiler, I mean, inside your command prompt, wherever you're running ngserve, it will tell you, okay, this is the error, and you just go ahead and resolve this. All the errors are readable just because it uses TypeScript behind the scenes, so it can figure out, okay, what's the type, and it can just avoid those errors. So I 15% is what I as per the study, but I believe it's more than that.
So I guess like for our audience, TypeScript is in general kind of interesting as an independent thing as well, not just with Angular. So I guess that
Yes,
answers the question. And
it's from
another
Microsoft.
question, right? Uh, Another question was, can you please talk about lifecycle hooks in Angular?
Okay, that's a really big topic. So generally, if you go to any front end technology, they have hooks available. So Angular also has some. I'll just guide you to the docs, Angular docs, and then you can see those. Otherwise, in case you have, if you get any issues, come join us, join the Discord server, and we can discuss about it. So
Sure.
meanwhile, yeah, I'll just share you life cycle. I'll just share the link inside private chat.
Yes, yes, we'll transfer it to the YouTube chat.
Yeah, sure.
Yes. Okay. Right. So, from our audience, we have a considerable amount of fan base in React. So, like, they're
Yeah.
obviously wondering, like, should they port? Why they port? Why should they port? And like, we have React libraries. So, like, why shift to Angular in general?
I mean, if you look. So a lot of developers ask me this question: React or Angular. I will, and I always answer: use whatever you are comfortable with. Right? At the end, what you are going to do is, in case you don't like Angular and you are going to work on Angular, you will get frustrated and you will not enjoy your work. Similar thing applies other ways, right? So if I work on Angular and I enjoy doing it, if I have to work on React, of course I will not give my 100%. So first, two things matter. First is, of course, you need a job. So in case you think whatever framework or technology you have chosen and you have a lot of jobs nearby, go ahead and choose it, and make sure you are interested in that, right? It's not like you are just doing it for money. So because after some point of time, money will be like not the primary concern for you. It will be like, I'm not enjoying my job. So choose whatever you are comfortable with. If you think you are really enjoying working with React, go ahead and do that. If you think you really enjoy working with Angular, go ahead and do that. I mean, I love Svelte for that, Svelte and Vue.js, but I don't work on it. But I like those, right? So it depends. So and it depends, because I'm a senior software engineer, right? So you will always hear this word whenever you ask some question to a senior software engineer. The answer will be, it depends, and that's what it depends.
Right. And finally, some comments about your GitHub Star, please.
Yeah. I mean, what do you want to know about GitHub Star? You have
Like
another
people
GitHub Star, yeah, coming tomorrow, Eddie, who will be joining you tomorrow, I think.
people wish to know, like, your experience being a GitHub star, like how to be one and
I mean,
things
okay, I
like
was
that.
not expecting it to be frank. I mean, I was not expecting that I'll be the first one from India. So I was surprised to actually receive the nomination and receive the mail. And I've been doing a lot of things in Angular from more than a year now. So 2019 is when I started my journey with open source, and I started contributing to Angular, and then I became Google Developer Expert in 2019. And when this GitHub Star program was launched, I was like really surprised because there was no one from India, and I felt really bad about that, to be frank. So I asked in my network, I asked everyone to nominate whoever they know, and I'm not sure from why they nominated me, but yes, they nominated me, and then uh, it's that's how it happened. So if you wish to be one, I would say just keep contributing to the community, and don't think about these titles. So when I started my own open source journey, title was not one of the thing which I was looking for. I was just looking for actually the way to contribute to the community. I worked in tech for 10 years before I actually started my open source. I'm glad that a lot of students on Saturday morning they are here to actually learn about some open source tech, stuff, and they are really interested and doing a lot of amazing things. I can see most of you are also part of Eddie Hub, and I can see a lot of new students actually going ahead and contributing to open source. I really love seeing that, and that's why I love the work which Eddie is doing, helping a lot of developers to start contributing to open source. And that's what we need. I mean, from India, we have a lot of developers. Not everyone is doing open source. Not everyone is at global stage. That's what we need. That's what I want to make possible. I mean, I want to see developers from India actually getting recognized at global stage, doing their own open source projects, not just being maintainer or contributor for a project, but just go ahead and create something new and enjoy it, and you will get all this titles. Don't worry about it.
so. I guess that ends the question. So thank you for joining us today. It was a really honor, and thank you for your time. And I guess there were some things left today, so we look forward to hearing more of
Yeah,
you
sure.
from.
Yeah, whenever. I
So
mean, I'm always available. So whenever you want to, I mean, we can discuss about forms and routing as well.
yes. So over to the host, Savik. I guess we can close the stream.
Okay. So thanks everyone. Thanks for joining, and see you on Discord channel or Twitter if possible.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us.
Bye.